Oh dear, this is unfortunate. Just had an interesting little incident that apparently wasn't recorded because the camera shut off. But I will relate it. This young woman walked by, and I think she might have come out of the Unitarian Church of Montreal here. I didn't really notice exactly where she came from. She might have just been walking down the street. Anyway, she was walking along the sidewalk there. She looked back at me and she said something, and I wasn't sure what she said. Like, she clearly said, you know, she looked back and she said something, and I heard that she said something, but because I was narrating to the camera, and basically, you know, I heard my voice was loud in hers, so I stopped and I said, what? You know, like, what did you say? And she repeated it. She said, you know, have a nice day, or have a good day, or have a wonderful day, or whatever. Something along those lines. I was really hoping it was recorded. Sadly, it wasn't. But what I did is what I usually do when somebody...
No, family.
Yeah, no problem, no problem. So anyway, you know, when pretty much anyone says have a nice day or something similar while I'm protesting against the Unitarian Universalist Association's immoral and unethical and borderline criminal and quite frankly batshit crazy attempted misuse of Canada's blasphemy law and legal bullying intended to hide such despicable crimes as pedophilia and rape committed by certain Unitarian Universalist ministers, I come back with, it's always a wonderful day, or it's always a nice day when I'm standing accused of blasphemy by Unitarians in the 21st century. You know, sometimes I expand that into, you know, when I'm standing accused of blasphemy in the 21st century by atheist Unitarians, because the Unitarians who are most responsible for hiring Stikeman Elliott barristers and solicitors litigation lawyer Maitre Marc-Andre Coulombe to falsely accuse me of the criminal act of blasphemous libel are top-level Unitarian Universalist Association leaders who are clearly atheists. One of those top-level leaders of the Unitarian Universalist Association is Rev Dr Peter Morales, the former president of the Unitarian Universalist Association, who in my view very appropriately resigned as president of the Unitarian Universalist Association on April Fool's Day of this year. Well done, President Morales. You picked a wonderful, very appropriate day to resign as president of the Unitarian Universalist Association. And then, of course, there's Kathleen Kay Montgomery, the former executive vice president of the Unitarian Universalist Association, who is also an atheist and who also is very involved in the Unitarian Universalist Association's false blasphemous libel accusation against me, because part of her job description as executive vice president of the Unitarian Universalist Association is to coordinate the work of the legal counsel of the Unitarian Universalist Association. So it would have been Kathleen Kay Montgomery who coordinated the work of the Unitarian Universalist Association's Canadian attorney, Maitre Marc-Andre Coulombe of Stikeman Elliott barristers and solicitors. So it was Kathleen Kay Montgomery who, perhaps more than any other Unitarian Universalist Association leader, had a hands-on role in arranging for Maitre Marc-Andre Coulombe to draft his bullshit cease and desist demand letter and have me served with it in June of 2012. Yeah. And then the other Unitarian who's actually not an atheist, or at least claims to be a Christian, who was involved in that is, okay, we're putting the signs away because the wind's blowing them too much, was Rev Dr Victoria Weinstein, or Weinstein, depending on how you pronounce it. I'm not sure if she's any relation to Harvey Weinstein. So yes, Rev Dr Victoria Weinstein, who claims to be a Christian Unitarian Universalist, was also very closely involved in the Unitarian Universalist Association's false blasphemous libel accusation against me, because part of what it was trying to do was to intimidate me into removing blog posts about Rev Dr. Victoria Weinstein's pedophile rapist parishioner Richard Buell of First Parish, Norwell in Massachusetts. Because Richard Buell was the only Unitarian Universalist who I'd specifically described as a pedophile rapist, and indeed the only Unitarian Universalist who I'd described as a pedophile, more generally. I was and still am aware of various other Unitarian Universalist pedophiles, and even pedophile rapists, but Richard Buell was the only one that I had blogged about prior to June of 2012. Hello. So clearly, Reverend Dr. Victoria Weinstein, had a role in the UUA's misuse of blasphemy law. And I say that because she was implicated in the same cease and desist demand letter in other ways. It should be pretty obvious anyway, even if she wasn't named in the, or I shouldn't say named because she wasn't actually named, but clearly spoken about. Essentially what it comes down to is I was accused of threatening and defamatory conduct amounting to sexual harassment of women Unitarian Universalist ministers for blogging about a sodomy fantasy that Reverend Dr. Victoria Weinstein posted to the internet on her pseudonymous Peace Bang blog. Some time ago, I think it was back in 2006, Peace Bang posted a very strident and in some ways quite in-your-face, rude and offensive blog post in which she criticized South Dakota State Senator Bill Napoli for some things that he certainly deserved some criticism for, at least some questions about. But instead of raising questions about Senator Bill Napoli's words in a ministerial manner, in other words, a civil and rational and calm manner, Reverend Dr. Victoria Weinstein essentially went ballistic. And towards the end of her rant, she said the following words: "Here's my sodomy fantasy, South Dakota State Senator Bill Napoli anally impaled on the Statue of Liberty's torch." So essentially, Reverend Dr. Victoria Weinstein, under her pseudonym Peace Bang, on her Peace Bang blog, was saying, she would like to see Senator Bill Napoli anally impaled on the Statue of Liberty's torch. So essentially, she wanted to see him, killed. That's basically wishing he was tortured to death. And so I find it ironic that, she then turns around and arranges to have the Unitarian Universalist Association's Canadian attorney, Maître Marc-André Coulombe, accuse me of threatening and defamatory conduct amounting to sexual harassment against her for criticizing, and I dare say even mocking, her own behavior, which could be much more reasonably described as threatening and defamatory conduct amounting to sexual harassment against Senator Bill Napoli. So yeah, just outrageous two-faced hypocrisy on the part of Reverend Dr. Victoria Weinstein, and she's still at it. She's just one of the most two-faced hypocrites I've ever seen. And on top of that, she's, you know, an offensive and abusive two-faced hypocrite. I mean, you can be a two-faced hypocrite and still come across as civil and polite and so on. Actually, in some ways, they're the worst kind. But nonetheless, what I'm getting at is, you know, Peace Bang is generally quite offensive. I mean, no, of course, she's not offensive every day of the week, every hour of the day or something, but, you know, every now and then she just decides to go on this offensive and, you know, sometimes even obscene rants. She's not doing it quite as much anymore. I think I've had a dissuasive effect on that with my public criticism of her, but she hasn't completely stopped. She's toned it down a little bit, but every now and then she just has to come out with some kind of offensive rant. So anyhow, let's see here. Yeah, it's very unfortunate that I did not record the little incident with the woman. I obviously didn't record a good chunk of my previous, well, I could say the word rant. It's not really a rant, is it? It's a monologue. I'm basically talking about my protest for anyone who might be interested. You know, if I'm going to be videoing everything anyway, to protect myself from false accusations and so on, I might as well at least explain what the protest is about. I mean, I could obviously walk back and forth and say nothing or say very little, but that would be a very, very boring video, obviously. But, you know, I have to run video to protect myself from false accusations brought against me by Montreal Unitarians. I also have to be able to record interactions with the police. Thankfully, there's much fewer of those these days, and the few that I have had have been much better interactions than in the past. Police are behaving much more professionally, partly as a result of my videos, which show them behaving in a very unprofessional manner. I mean, they are very well aware of my videos at Station 11, to say nothing of elsewhere in the SPVM police force. And I think they realize just how unprofessional and incompetent, to say nothing of, in some cases, overly authoritarian and aggressive and, you know, harassing and intimidating and so on. They're well aware of this. And so basically they've decided the best thing to do is just let Rob and Edgar exercise his constitutionally guaranteed civil right to engage in peaceful public protest, and they'll leave them alone unless they get a really serious complaint. And they've probably told Montreal Unitarians like not to call any more bullshit complaints in, because if they do, maybe the police are fed up enough that they will bring public mischief charges against any Montreal Unitarian who brings a false complaint against me. There was an opportunity to bring public mischief charges against Margot Ellis when she assaulted me in January of 2014, and then very foolishly arranged to call the police either herself, or she arranged to have an accomplice call the police and accuse me of assaulting her. Big mistake, because I had video of her assaulting me, and the camera was running for the whole period of my protest, so it showed clearly that I didn't even touch her physically, let alone assault her, but she definitely gave me a body check that sent me flying onto my back in the snow. So the police arrived, and they were reasonable. They were reasonable. You know, they were basically told, you know, that I had assaulted someone outside the church, but they weren't overly aggressive. They were questioning me, and then at one point, you know, it came out, you know, because they were initially talking about my filming, and then suddenly one of them piped up and said that a woman had fallen down in front of the church, with the clear insinuation that I was responsible for this. So he didn't outright accuse me of assault, but it was clear that they had received a report that a woman had been, you know, essentially pushed down outside the church, and that they were responding to that report. Well, the only person who'd been pushed down outside the church was yours truly, by Margot Ellis. And when I said, well, that didn't happen, they came back with, we have eyewitnesses. To which I said, well, you cannot have eyewitnesses to something that did not happen. So it was very clear to me then that what had happened is that somebody from the Unitarian Church of Montreal had called in to the SPVM claiming to be an eyewitness to an alleged assault against a female Unitarian, Montreal Unitarian. So that means there were two people involved, because usually the victim, or alleged victim, is not an eyewitness. You know, they're not considered an eyewitness. You know, eyewitness is usually a third party who witnesses something and isn't actually involved in it. So it was clear that Margot Ellis had arranged with someone else to falsely accuse me of assault, no doubt in an effort to deflect any ability of me to, you know, accuse her of assault. She was trying to flip it over. But I had video evidence, you know, showing that she had assaulted me and that I had not reacted in any way that could be seen as a physical assault. I did call her a bitch, but I think she acts like a bitch. She deserves to be called a bitch. You know, I don't throw that word around lightly. I don't throw that word around every day of the week or every month of the year. You know, I very rarely use the word bitch to describe a woman unless she behaves in a manner that fits the dictionary description of the word bitch. So anyhow, getting back to that whole fiasco, you know, at that point I said, well, since you guys are here, I was assaulted by Margot Ellis. I have video evidence to prove that. I want you to go inside the church and arrest Margot Ellis for assaulting me. But actually what I also said to them is, you know, I want you to go in and get a written report, a signed written complaint against me for my alleged assault, so that I can then bring public mischief charges against whoever wrote that false report. I mean, there already was a false report that had been called in, but I wanted to strengthen the evidence by having the police